The letter reached me 3 weeks after the man who wrote it had died, and I have never in my life received a piece of correspondence that struck me so hard with so few words. I am the Duke of Ashgrove, and the men under my command in 2 campaigns called me the Iron Duke. Not for cruelty, I hope, but for the kind of distance a man builds when he has buried too many friends to risk feeling much for the living. Sergeant Will Price had served under me for 9 years, through 2 campaigns and a winter retreat that should, by all rights, have killed us both. He was not a man I had thought of, often since the army discharged him with a wound that never properly healed, until his letter arrived, written in a hand gone shaky with fever, asking, no, naming me, with the full weight of a dying man's last request, guardian to a girl of 6 years, old he had taken in after her own parents perished in a fire he had failed, by minutes, to stop. She has no one else, Your Grace. He had written, I have done what I could, but I am dying, and the parish will not keep her past the year. I ask this of you because you are the only man I have ever known who keeps his word even when it costs him. Her name is Margaret. She likes to be called Meg. That is all I have to give her, and I am giving it to you. I had never met the child. I owed Will Price my life twice over from the peninsula, once when he carried me a half-mile on his back with a French ball still in my shoulder, and once when he talked me out of a duel I would not have survived, and I had not visited him once in the 4 years. Since his discharge, I rode for the parish workhouse at Caldwell within 2 days, and I told myself the whole way that this was as a matter of paperwork. A guardianship transferred, an allowance arranged, a girl placed somewhere respectable, and my debt to a dead sergeant discharged as cleanly as any other obligation a man settles and forgets. I did not expect to find the board of the Caldwell parish already assembled to decide the matter without me, nor did I expect to find, standing alone before 5 seated men in a cold stone room that smelled of damp and tallow, a young woman in a plain gray dress arguing with a composure that did not waver even as her hands clasped before her were white-knuckled. She is 6 years old, the young woman was saying, as I came through the door unannounced, the porter too startled by my arrival to do more than gape. She has been fed, clothed, and taught her letters for a year on my wages alone, because no one else in this parish would do it. And now you intend to send her to the Caldwell Asylum, because it is cheaper than continuing to pretend you ever cared what became of her. Miss Price, the chairman said, in the weary tone of a man who had had this argument before and expected to win it eventually through sheer attrition, you are not the child's guardian. You are a governess with no living relation to her at all, and the parish cannot continue to. I am the only person in this room who has sat up with her through a fever, she said, and her voice did not rise, though something in it had gone very tight. I am the only person in this room who knows that she is afraid of thunder and brave about everything. Else, who knows she will not eat carrots, but will eat anything, if it is called by a different name first. If that does not make me her guardian in every way that matters, then I do not know what the word is for, and I would be glad if one of you would tell me. I had been a duke for 11 years, and I had grown accustomed to rooms going silent when I entered them. This one did, all at once. 5 men turning toward the door, with the particular scramble of officials, caught, doing something they would rather a duke had not seen. Chairs pushed back, papers gathered, one man half rising and then thinking better of it, and the young woman, Miss Honor Price, turned last of all, and did not scramble at all. She looked at me with the same steady defiance she had aimed at the board not a moment before, as though my title meant nothing beside the argument she had not yet finished making, and I found, to my own surprise, that I respected her for it before I had heard another word. Forgive the interruption, I said. I believe I am expected, though perhaps not so soon. I am Ashgrove. I have come about a ward named Margaret Price. The chairman's face did something complicated, relief, I think, that the matter might now be lifted entirely from his hands, and the responsibility with it, and a flicker of something less comfortable, the realization that whatever decision they had been about to make in private was now being made in front of the one man whose disapproval could cost every one of them their positions and their livings besides. Your Grace, he said, rising properly now, we were not aware the guardianship had been. Sergeant Price wrote to me before his death, I said. I had not expected to find the matter already under discussion without me. I take it Miss Price here is some relation to the child? No relation. Your Grace, the chairman said too quickly, with the air of a man eager to settle the matter cleanly. a governess, formerly in the employ of the late sergeant's household, who has taken an interest in the child rather beyond what her position required. I raised her, Honor Price said, before he had finished the sentence. Her voice did not rise, but something in it sharpened to a fine edge. For a year, on 11 shillings a week, in 2 rooms above a chandler's shop, because her father, my brother, asked me to with his last breath, and because I gave him my word, and I have never in my life broken my word to anyone, least of all a dying man. I had not known until that moment that Sergeant Price had a sister. His letter had said, "She has no one else." And I had taken that to mean the child alone, an orphan twice over with no family at all. I understood now that he had meant something larger and harder, that he had died believing his sister would be left with a child she had no legal claim to, and a parish eager to separate them both for the sake of a few shillings a week, and that his letter to me had been, in part, an attempt to give his sister the only protection a dying soldier could think to arrange. A duke's name attached to the matter, so that no parish board would dare do what this one had very nearly done not 5 minutes before I walked through that door. "Show me where the child has been living," I said. It was not a request, and the chairman did not treat it as one. We walked the half-mile from the workhouse to the chandler's shop in a silence I did not try to break. Honor Price beside me with her chin level and her eyes forward and her gray skirts catching the mud at the edge of the lane, and I found myself, for the first time in longer than I could remember, uncertain what to say to another person. Every sentence I composed in my head sounding either too cold for the woman beside me or presumptuous for a man she had met not 10 minutes before. The rooms above the shop were small, 2 of them, reached by a narrow stair that creaked, and they were the cleanest, warmest 2 rooms I had ever stood in. A narrow bed with a hand-stitched quilt, every patch a different fabric, as though sewn from whatever scraps could be found. A slate propped against the wall, chalked with letters in 2 different hands, a child's careful, wobbling print, and beside it, in a steadier hand, the same letters written again as an example to copy. A small coat, outgrown, carefully mended at both elbows, folded on a shelf rather than discarded, as though someone could not bear to let it go, even knowing it would never be worn again. And on the table, half-finished, a child's pinafore being let out at the seams, a needle still threaded through the fabric where Honor Price had set it down that morning to walk to a meeting she had known, somehow, would not go in her favor. "She's grown 3 inches this year," Honor said, when she saw me looking at the pinafore. I let out everything twice already. I was going to do it again tonight. Before whatever was decided this morning made it a question of where she'd be sleeping at all. She said it simply, without any apparent awareness that she had just described, in 2 sentences. More devotion than I had seen from most people in most years of my life, soldiers included. "Where is she now?" I asked. "At the rectory with the vicar's wife for the day. I did not want her in that room while they discussed her as though she were a parcel to be redirected to a cheaper address. For the first time, something cracked in that steady composure. Not tears, but something close to them, quickly controlled. Her jaw set hard against it. "I have 11 shillings a week, Your Grace, and a position that ends in March when the family I work for removes to Bath without me. I have been trying for a month to think what I will do, because I cannot, leave her to that asylum, whatever it costs me. I had hoped your letter, when it came, might mean an allowance. A small one, enough to keep us both somewhere decent. I did not dare hope for more than that, and I will not pretend to you now that I did. I stood in that small warm room, surrounded by the evidence of a year's quiet, unthanked devotion. A coat mended rather than discarded, letters chalked twice over, so a child would not feel alone in learning them. A pinafore let out by a woman with 11 shillings a week and no certainty of a position past March. And I thought of Sergeant Price's letter and the line that had struck me hardest of all. "You are the only man I have ever known who keeps his word even when it costs him." He had not been writing only about Meg. He had been asking me to look after his sister too, in the only language a dying man had left to him, by trusting that I would see when I arrived exactly what I was seeing now. "Miss Price," I said, "I am going to honor my sergeant's request in full. Margaret Price will be my ward, with my name and my protection behind her, for as long as she requires either." I watched her brace, visibly, for whatever came next, for the allowance, the small mercy, the polite arrangement that would separate her from the child she had raised as her own. And you will come with her, not as a governess on a parish's sufferance, nor on 11 shillings a week from a family bound for Bath without you, but as the mistress of whatever household I establish for Margaret's upbringing. Her guardian in every sense that matters, exactly as you told that board not an hour ago, with my name behind it, so that no one will ever again question your right to her. Your Grace, your brother did not write to me only about a child, I said. He wrote to me about you, though he had not the words to say it plainly. Perhaps because he knew you would refuse outright if he asked it of you directly, and so he asked it of me instead. I do not intend to let his last wish go half-honored. We returned to the workhouse board that same afternoon. Honor Price, myself, and within the hour, a small girl with her father's solemn eyes and a death grip on Honor's hand, fetched from the rectory and brought, wide-eyed and silent, into a room full of men who had spent the morning debating whether she was worth the cost of keeping. I do not believe the Caldwell board had ever moved so quickly to produce paperwork as they did once I made my intentions plain. Guardianship, transferred, formally and permanently, to the Duke of Ashgrove. Miss Honor Price installed as the ward's guardian in residence at Ashgrove itself, with a settlement that owed nothing to charity and everything to what she had already earned 100 times over, in a year of 11-shilling weeks. She is mine now, I told the board, when the papers were signed, and the chairman's hand was, I noted, not quite steady on the pen, meaning Margaret, and meaning, though I did not say it in quite those words that day, the woman who had never once in a year asked anything for herself. Both of them. And I would advise this board to remember, the next time a child without means comes before you, that someone is always watching to see whether you kept your word. And that I, gentlemen, have an excellent memory. Meg Price grew up at Ashgrove with a mended coat she refused to give up for years, until it was carefully packed away alongside the pinafore and the chalk slate in a chest she kept her whole life. She had, in time, an aunt who became, within 2 years, my wife, not because a dying sergeant's letter required it of either of us, though I have always believed Will Price knew precisely what he was setting in motion when he wrote it, but because I had walked into 2 small rented rooms above a chandler's shop, expecting to discharge a debt cleanly and be done with it, and found instead the only kind of devotion I had ever truly wanted, quiet, unthanked, mended at the elbows, and given freely to a child with no claim on it at all. I kept my word to my sergeant. In the keeping of it I found I had also, at last, kept faith with myself, and gained in the same year both the daughter and the wife I had not known, until I stood in that small warm room above a chandler's shop, that I had been searching for all along.